Welcome back to the Alt. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday. Week 1 has finally had a bow on it. It was glorious to a degree. It was horrendous to another degree. Overreaction Monday is over, but we didn't have every game done on Monday just yet. We had another one that still had to come to an end that came to an end last night. Let's just say we have a bit of an Overreaction Tuesday coming up. I can't even say, let's just say, because there's that one meme that's like, let's just say I'm not gonna... I hate that I even said that unironically just now. Regardless, thank you for joining me back on the show today. I'm your host, Shapirian. I'm so excited to talk football with you today. We've got an interesting little segment regarding fan tweets and some fun things with that later. We talk about some news stories that you probably haven't heard covered a lot, at least as of Monday night. But first, let's jump into the game that we saw last night where the 49ers were victorious over the New York Jets 32-19. And I'm just going to get my thoughts on it out of the way. The one thing that's going to make this a bit of an Overreaction Tuesday, and I just know there's people out there who are going to hate me for this. If this is your first episode, I promise we're not a hot take driven show here. This is not, let's just get engagement. Let's make the New York fans mad. Nothing like that. I made some overreactions on Monday regarding teams that cannot win the Super Bowl. And I said, the AFC looks a lot more open than I thought it was going to at the end of week 1. And it's just week 1. It's just week 1. I understand it's just week 1. But the AFC looked very much wide open. And I said, the Jets have a chance to show me that they belonged in my tier of teams that can win the Super Bowl this year. Yes, if you're just tuning in, if you didn't watch anything from Prediction Week, let me fill you in at least on this tidbit and say, I said the Jets will be obvious playoff contenders, but that they do not have a chance to win the Super Bowl, at least a realistic one, right? All 32 teams have a chance right now, so that's not what I'm getting at. But I'm talking about teams that, if things go as well as they could, and if things go as they're planning, and as things go the way I see them playing out, I think I had like 10 teams in that tier or something like that. I did not have the Jets in there. My overreaction today is that I was right. Pat myself on the back. I'm giving myself some props there. We had a rough week last week with my survivor pick, Cincinnati, not winning their game. My underdog lock, Washington, getting trounced ultimately. But we are 2-1 now in primetime picks. So let's get the ball rolling on that. That Friday game was in Brazil. That's weird. Maybe we're just good at picking these Thursday, Monday night games. So we got the Thursday night game right. Didn't get the Friday night game right. We got the Monday night game right. I did have San Francisco winning this one. But to extrapolate on that, and I acknowledge that it is extrapolating. It is taking data and reading into things that aren't there. I'm going to say the New York Jets absolutely are not going to win the Super Bowl this year. They're not. They might make it to the AFC title game. They're not winning the Super Bowl. Look at how the 49ers handled them today. It was slow at points. Methodical. Wear you out. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey, people. Do you think they cared? It didn't look like they cared. It did. Mason might have been better. He looked unbelievable at points in this game. And I just have to wonder, the Jets defense was supposed to keep them in this game. And you've got Jets superfan Mike Greenberg talking about Saleh's game plan looks terrible. That defense looks terrible. They're getting shredded. Rodgers looks fine. And I definitely agree Rodgers looked fine. If nothing else, he looked accurate. He looked able to read defenses just like he's always been able to at a high level. They had that free play touchdown. Treads, who I'm having on the show tomorrow, immediately texted me and said he might be the best ever at that. I have to agree. He is awesome when the defense goes offsides and they get the snap off without blowing the play dead. But he didn't quite look like a world beater out there. That's a term I'll use frequently, a world beater, right? Mahomes is a world beater. Allen is a world beater. But they don't necessarily need that to be the case if the defense plays at a super high level. Defense didn't look great tonight against Brock Purdy, a receiving core that played very average, and a backup halfback. Do you see what I'm getting at here? It doesn't look super promising for New York. As for San Francisco, I said they're a team that could win the Super Bowl. I had them as my 2 seed in the NFC. If I could go back and redo it, I'd have them again as my 1 seed because Atlanta is not getting that 1 seed in the NFC. We'll talk more about it later in this episode. I talk about how, I lied. I lied about that, and I'll elaborate more on it further. But, yeah, that game to me went about as expected. I expected New York to look a little better than they did last season. I don't think New York competes to that degree last season, even though they were in so many games. If nothing else, Aaron Rodgers, welcome back. We're glad you're back. The NFL is a better place when Aaron Rodgers is healthy and playing. To the San Francisco 49ers, congrats on leaving off right where you left off, or taking off right from where you left off, I should say. They looked great, and as far as I'm concerned, that game was chalk. That game was what I expected. Nothing surprising from this game. So, I will throw it out there again. I'll extrapolate a bit of an overreaction from that and say the Jets, they're not winning the Super Bowl this year. Come on, people. Wake up. They're not good enough in that AFC, more than likely to even make it to the Super Bowl. And if they do, I don't trust them against the NFC juggernauts when defense tends to go out the door in these games and they turn into shootouts. Look at the most recent years. San Francisco's great defense. Kansas City's great defense. Philly's great defense. Defense goes out the door in these games a lot of the times, right? LA back in the 21 season only gave up 20, but that's less common these days. These Super Bowl games have 28 points scored by both teams a lot of the time. I don't see New York hanging around in that type of game, should they even make it. So that's it for that. New York, you're not making the Super Bowl, but you'll be fun to watch this season. I will really enjoy watching that game, at multiple points hit every need that I had from a Monday night game to kick off week 1 and wrap things up. Moving on now to some news that we got on Monday, starting with some that I have not really heard be covered at all, which is just a little strange because if there's fire to this smoke, granted it is just a little bit of smoke, this is the biggest story in the NFL right now, even if it's just a 1 week long story or a 4-day long story. I'm talking about news that you might not have heard yourself, which was that Lamar Jackson was absent from practice on Monday, and we didn't get a great answer as to why. The part that feels the strangest about it to me is that they're coming off a mini bye. We obviously didn't get any news saying Lamar Jackson got hurt, Lamar Jackson did this, Lamar Jackson is banged up. There's a weird injury that they're going to get they're going to double check and get a second opinion on or anything like that. Nothing. We heard nothing from them since the reports on Thursday night or the press conferences on Thursday night. They have all weekend. Monday comes along. Your team's undisputed leader is not there. And that's just weird overall. Now, there are cases where even a quarterback sometimes, granted not usually during the season, will get an excused absence. But John Harbaugh didn't really have anything further to say about it. When he was asked for more detail about why Lamar was not even in the building for this practice, he mentioned some people were hurt and weren't going to practice as a result. He mentioned some people had the day off for personal reasons. If your star quarterback, the face of your franchise, is among those people out for personal reasons, and you're already okay saying some people are missing for personal reasons, shouldn't you just say he's out for personal reasons? This is my Super Bowl pick. I care about this stuff. I'm like, guys, is Lamar okay? He looked great Thursday night. Got the Raiders this week. I think they have Dallas week 3. Now is when we got to get it going. You're coming out of an 0-1 hole. Week 2 is super important for any team that lost in week 1, obviously, because 0-2 is a terrible hole to be in. When he was asked for more detail on top of that, John Harbaugh, again, they're asking about Lamar specifically. He says, the injury report comes out Wednesday. Am I stupid for taking that as Lamar's going to be on the injury report? Even if it's just a nagging injury. Even if it's just, he needs some rest. He's sore, dealing with soreness of any of his 1,000 muscles that I'm sure hurt after running the way he did on the Chiefs on Thursday night. But this is weird. This is notable. I don't know why no one is really talking about it. Maybe it's because as it was coming out, there's still a game to talk about with Jets 49ers ahead that night and things like that. But if he's not there Tuesday. And for what it's worth, I don't know the Ravens' schedule. It's possible they don't practice Tuesday. It's possible Tuesday is some sort of other weird day, especially when you have a mini bye they're coming off of. But I'll be curious to see. If he's not there Tuesday, we're going to need answers. The answer can't be wait for the injury report on Wednesday. He's not even in the building on Monday or Tuesday? That's weird. So just keep an eye on this. I'm not saying it is a for sure nuclear explosion type of story, but I just think it's weird that basically no one has talked about it at all. Like, the news broke, my jaw hit the floor because we got no answers from John Harbaugh. Like, I waited once it was reported that he wasn't there until he was going to speak. I made sure to be paying attention to what was coming out about what he was saying. I mean, he didn't give any good answer besides the injury report comes out Wednesday. So I don't know. Maybe John Harbaugh is just giving us, taking us for a loop. I have no idea. But pay attention to what is going on with Lamar Jackson as you go throughout your Tuesday. See if he practices, see if he's in the building. Could be a huge story going into week 2. Speaking of huge stories moving forward, the Rams' production leader last season, Puka Nacua, hit his head. Actually, I want to say it was another injury. It looked like he hit his head during the Lions-Rams game, but I think it was something with one of his legs, an ankle injury that has him going on IR, meaning he's out for at least 4 games. The official injury is a sprained PCL, meaning it's enough to put him on the IR, which means it's serious. And when you're talking about a production leader gone from a team that looked really nice all last season, and already without him last night looked really nice, you have to wonder, does this shake things up for the Rams' potential outlook? You're talking about a team that a lot of people were saying, are they going to win the NFC West this year? I think they might. I've seen, it's probably like 50-50 as to what people I saw take the Rams in the NFC West versus the 49ers. I myself did not do that. I just have the Rams getting a wild card spot like last season. But it is worth noting, that's your production leader on offense, breaking rookie records. He looks like a true number 1. And thank God for the Rams, Cooper Kupp is clearly back. So, the question I wanted to ask is, does Puka Nacua going on IR hurt the Rams? The obvious answer is, well, yes, they're not at 100%, and there's a guy that we know can go for 1,100 yards and have a fantastic season, and he's missing. Yes, that hurts them. Duh. That's not really what I mean. What I mean is this going to cost them games? Obviously, we don't know the answer to that. It really depends on how long he's out and how often teams are going to tee off on Cooper Kupp and make him a non-factor as a result of Puka not needing the spotlight. It's worth noting, Matt Stafford didn't have him basically all game and was still the best offensive player in the entire game last night. You can talk about Jameson Williams, you can talk about Kupp specifically, his favorite target, but to me, you look at those stat lines, best offensive player on the field during the Sunday night game was Matt Stafford. And he very much outplayed Jared Goff. He had his team with as high as an 81.9% chance of winning that game late into the fourth quarter. Until that drive stalled out, he couldn't find Kupp on 3rd and 10. And then he doesn't even get the ball back and you lose. And that sucks. Football is a fickle sport. You'll hear me say that multiple times all season. But with that said, that was a sudden change. I'm sure Puka was a huge part of the game plan, even with Kupp being back. But they looked fantastic. They looked absolutely amazing. And as a result, I don't particularly think it's going to hurt them a ton. The next 4 games for them are at the Cardinals. They have the 49ers at home. Rams 49ers is always a bloodbath regardless of who's on the teams. You're at Chicago. We'll see if they're figuring it out on offense by then. And then you get the Packers in what could be Jordan Love's return game, since people are saying, it seems to be the consensus, Jordan Love's just going to miss 3 games. You're going to have to find a way to get it done. I think they will. I don't have a ton of concerns, but this is something to put a pin in and check back in on regularly as the season progresses until Puka is healthy and back out there again. He had the lingering injuries all offseason, all through training camp, when it was like, I still took him in fantasy, which I'm currently regretting. So many experts and even people within my own league were like, I just think Kupp was going to get all that production. And dang it! It looks like they were right. Kupp looked awesome last night. It looked like he hasn't lost a step. And I was beginning to wonder if we were just on the downward part of Cooper Kupp's career, since he is a smaller receiver and he takes a lot of hits since they play him in the slot all the time. Wondering how much time he has left at a high production level. at least this season, it looks like he's going to be just fine as long as he's out on the field. So, with that said, wishing Puka Nacua the best, and I don't think the Rams are going to have a problem with him gone just because this team looks really good. Keep an eye on those other injuries, though. The offensive line's really banged up. Could be scary hours if that ends up being impactful. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So with that said, let's move on to what I think is a fun little bit that I want to start every week. We're kind of figuring things out here, and this is one that I had in mind really since I started the show that I wanted to do. I'm calling this the Weekly Tweet Spotlight. Genius name, I know, right? I just want to highlight tweets from different fan bases around the NFL and kind of do a pulse check. See if this is in the loop or if it seems out of touch, and just talk about the thoughts that they give me as I read these tweets. So first, we actually got a stand-up comedian tweeting about the New York Giants. The New York Giants have fans all over, so it's not super surprising. Look at this tweet from Sam Morrill. He said, "If I have a week to live, I'm going to watch a bunch of Daniel Jones games because it'll feel like an eternity." Oh, Sam. Oh, Sam. Sunday was my brother-in-law's birthday. He's a huge Giants fan, and I texted him and said, "Happy birthday. Hope you didn't watch too much of the Giants today," because I can imagine that ruins your day, considering, how much football games have an impact on my day when my team goes out and absolutely sucks. I've been there, bro. And he is just despondent, and I know a lot of Giants fans are despondent, and I don't know that there's a ton of light at the end of the tunnel if the Vikings are able to dog walk you like that while you look completely not even present on offense. I really wonder, what was that game plan from Dable? Again, I have not watched every play of that game yet, so I don't want to comment on it too hard. But they, from what I've seen, looked awful, dude. They look awful. And I just have to wonder, when does this get better for the Giants? You're still looking at a bad situation in the quarterback room because your backup is now Tommy DeVito. Tyrod's not there. He's across town, still playing in MetLife, but now with the Jets, he's Aaron Rodgers' backup. And Giants fans have felt like this for a few years now. Even in 2022, he wills you guys into the playoffs, and he wins a playoff game over the Vikings. So maybe I should have seen this Vikings revenge game going. The Vegas only had 1.5 in the Vikings' favor, even though they were, on the road. And I still was like, man, I like the Giants in this one. I just think they're not going to suck that much, and I think the Vikings' outlook is more doom and gloom. And that's still true. I don't think the Vikings are a playoff team, but Sam Darnold had a game in this one where the experts were saying this is his best chance to succeed in his NFL career, and I've tended to agree with that. But Kevin O'Connell, round of applause. You are a brilliant offensive mind, clearly. He has people debating and saying, man, does Kirk belong in the elite conversations? Ooh, man, is this Viking team's going to win a Super Bowl? And obviously last year wasn't the year anyone in Minnesota wanted it to be. But he comes out there. Sam Darnold looks awesome. They bolstered up the defense in ways that I didn't think they were. I actually spoke to a Vikings fan this past weekend before week 1, and he was telling me no one's talking about the fact that, yes, we lost Danielle Hunter, but the defensive replacements that they brought in should be really good. We'll see as time moves on, but they certainly handled the Giants there. And Daniel Jones, and he was in a pickle all game. He just was unable to get out of his own way. The Giants looked terrible. So this tweet, completely valid. Giants fans have been dealing with what I imagine feels like an eternity of Daniel Jones, really since he got drafted. There was questions coming out, and I am on the record. I will say this one all the way. I said Daniel Jones is not the guy for New York. To play devil's advocate for myself here, I was saying the Giants should take Dwayne Haskins. Rest his soul. He also wouldn't have been the right choice there. So it's not like all the answers are black and white, but the Daniel Jones fit has always been weird. He's great when he's able to make things happen with his legs, but he just seems frazzled in the pocket so often. And so often, if he is playing from behind in games, it just seems like he immediately goes into what I'll use as a metaphor here. I remember playing NBA 2K or NBA Live with my dad every now and then growing up, and he would say, I'd get down big because I didn't know what I'm doing. It's a rite of passage, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm down 12 in the third quarter. Time to start chucking threes. And he would say something along the lines of like, oh, you're already in, put up a three and pray mode or something like that. Not quite quoting that the way that I wanted to because I can't remember it. But it just seems like Daniel Jones gets into put up threes and pray mode immediately when they're down. And I'm sure there's stats out there that say, no, he's not the worst when they're coming back. I know he's got comeback wins under his belt. But when they get down early, when they face adversity early, those games feel like misery for everyone involved for the Giants. They're catching a lot of flack as a fan base for booing this man to death. But someone pointed out, he's not thrown a touchdown pass in MetLife Stadium since he faced the Colts in 2022. It's not like he played 0 games last year. He just didn't throw any there last year until he got hurt. They look awful. It looks like a bad time to be a Giants fan yet again. So with that said, this tweet, Sam Morrill, super valid. Let's move on to another one here. One that completely caught me by surprise. I picked the other team to win this game, even though the final score of this game was 47-10. And as a result, by the way, I'm getting killed in my pick'em league. I'm doing awful. I'm like second to last with only 8 games picked correctly. Great times. Good stuff overall. This tweet right here from Jacob Gibbs. By the way, I scrolled through this guy's page once I found this. He's got really interesting stats out there. I almost promise you, just from the brief little glimpse I took at this guy's account, this is not going to be the last time I cite him on this show. But he said the Saints went from dead last in both pre-snap motion and play action to first in pre-snap motion, third in play action after week 1. Guys, weren't they up like 30-0 at halftime here? Weren't they up like 30-0 at halftime? That's when you start killing time. So Clint Kubiak, it looks like I might have been, not doing you justice for what you might do to the New Orleans Saints this season. I now see a much clearer path to them making the playoffs and winning the NFC South, in particular after the Atlanta Falcons looked terrible this week. More on them in a second. But for now, Derek Carr looked the best that he's looked, in my opinion, since late 2021. And yes, there is the asterisk of week 1. There is the asterisk of it's the Carolina Panthers. Sorry, Treads. But Carr looked awesome. 19 for 23, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. They didn't even need him in the second half. And they still had tons of pre-play motion, tons of play action from an offense that looked really stale at a lot of points in 2023. We'll see if this is going to be a trend, but typically you come out in week 1 and what you're doing is what you were the most comfortable with based off of how your preseason went. You come out and it's like, okay, we're going to do what I felt the best with in the preseason. Here's our game plan. Let's go do it. Clearly, they feel good about pre-snap motion and play action. If it works for them all season, the Saints have a very real chance to win the NFC South, which is something that I just last week said I don't see happening. I saw this as being the collapse season for them, and it could still be. I'm not ready to go all in on the Saints yet. Again, my teams that I've adopted are the Falcons and the Dolphins. And right now, I'm having to console one of my adopted children because they look like they were fed false promises. So New Orleans, congrats to you. You looked good. You deserve it. I mean, it's been a minute for you all as a fan base, and so I completely resonate with the fact that, you guys are still struggling to recover from the Drew Brees era as an organization. It's taking a long time to get back on your feet, and you just seem to be in constant win-now mode when all the signs point towards the fact that you need a full rebuild. We'll see what happens this year. You could be a bona fide playoff team just because you're in the NFC South. If you weren't, I'd still be calling you frauds. I'd still say, I don't care about this week 1 performance. Because you're in the NFC South, I'm going to be paying a little more attention to you as the season goes on to see if this is a trend or if it's just week 1 doing what it does best and completely lying to you as to what a team looks like. So one more here, and this one hurts. This one hurts all around. There's only one AFC North team that got a win this week in week 1, and it was the team that didn't even start their starting quarterback. The Pittsburgh Steelers won a game with I think 220 in offensive production, 220 yards. Was it even that? I had the number yesterday, and now I don't remember. I should have re-looked it up before this episode. But I have to wonder, what's with the Steelers and how they make this stuff happen? Because every year we say, this is the year they're not going to do it. This is the year they fall apart. And here they are again, week 1, 1-0. Alone atop the AFC North, football's best division last year, right? Projected to be the best division in football again this year. And the Steelers won 18-10 over the offseason champions. Now, offseason championships don't get banners. There's a reason for that, and it's because they lied to us a lot. Dallas is a famous example of a frequent offseason champion that doesn't do anything. But this year, the Atlanta Falcons are my undisputed offseason champs, and again, one of my adopted children of the pod. So look at this tweet from @Can'tGuardJake on Twitter. He says, the Steelers with Arthur Smith calling plays, handily beating the Falcons with 0 offensive touchdowns is just another chapter in this absolute circus of a franchise. Hard to disagree. I feel for Falcons fans. They are forever going to have maybe the worst joke in NFL history thrown at them. They'll never recover from it. The jokes will never not be funny, in my opinion. There's 28-3 jokes every now and then that I think are still good. Honestly, there really are. And then, it pops up on the scoreboard when teams preview playing the Falcons. Sometimes the Patriots run in their face. Matt Ryan will never escape it. He did something with 283 yards one game and had a massive blunder at the end or something. And then Matt Ryan, of course, has the single biggest comeback in NFL history on him in that Vikings game a couple years ago. He ends up having a ball put into the Hall of Fame due to an accomplishment he had. The ball's number with the Indianapolis Colts is 283. 28-3 is never going to die. It's never going to die. The Falcons have been through enough. This was supposed to be the year where they turn it around. And they say, hold on a minute. Let's get this together here. Our defense looks mean. We've got a quarterback now. We've got some weapons on offense that he should be able to exploit and make look like gods at times, because that's what Kirk does with his weapons. You come out week 1, all the preparation, and what happens? 10 points on the Steelers. You give up 6 field goals and lose the game. I'm not ready to sound the alarms on the Atlanta Falcons yet, but that's only for one reason. It's not for the reason of I still believe they can get the 1 seed. I don't think the 1 seed is in the picture for them anymore. I lied completely. They're not getting the 1 seed. Again, similar to the Saints, if not for the fact that they're in the NFC South, I'd be really concerned. Also, number 1 easiest schedule in the NFL. Say what you will about it. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't look like world beaters. They didn't even look like world beaters in this game. But the Steelers aren't the reason why they have the number 1 easiest schedule in the NFL. They weren't looking at it and be like, look at that week 1 game, man, what an easy win. The Steelers are a tough out every time. So it's not time to sound the alarms yet. But come next Monday, you will hear me say, forget it. If the Falcons look 0-2 with a terrible performance yet again in week 2. If Kirk looks terrible, and this is another game I've not watched all the way through yet, so forgive me for not wanting to put my name on this yet, but from what I've seen, he looked very immobile in the pocket. And when the pocket collapsed around him, Kirk has been very good throughout his career at stepping up in the pocket and making something happen, even if it means swallowing a hit. And I get that he's getting older. I get that Achilles has to be a concern. But if he can't do that, the Falcons are in for a rough time. And he's got a ton of money guaranteed. I hate to have contract talk going into week 2 of the NFL. When you're talking to Deshaun Watson, when you're talking Kirk Cousins, and you're talking about stupid money being thrown at them, I'm talking real FU money being thrown at them, you have to sit and say, what's going to happen? Is this going to be a real trend? I hope not for my adopted child, the Atlanta Falcons. But I have to wonder, with how hot the Miami Dolphins always start, is this going to be a year where I have to show favoritism towards only one of my adopted children? Because the Dolphins, for all their mistakes, for how close the Jags kept it, for how improved that Jags D looked, by the way. Just saying. They kept it close, but the Dolphins won the game. The Falcons, you kept it close. You couldn't get anything done on offense. I don't feel good about you. In fact, you're making me feel really sick. I have to wonder if I'm going to have to go, attend this kid's sports game instead of yours. I have to wonder if you've got a recital while someone else is having an award ceremony, if I'm going to have to pick, do I pick you? No. Not right now, I don't. Step up, Atlanta. I picked you for a good reason. I came out on my brand new show, ran by just me, and said, you're the team I believe in the NFC that no one cares enough about yet. Wake up. You can't do this anymore. This tweet from Can't Guard Jake, totally valid, totally on point. To say this is another chapter in this circus of a franchise feels true. You need to close the book immediately as you go into week 2. That book needs to end. Okay? You need to hope that was the epilogue of the last book. That chapter, whatever you want to say. This has to be something different moving forward. Defense. 6 field goals means they were in scoring position 6 times. Not going to do it. You're going to have to carry them. Let's see what happens. For now, that is all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this. There's so many weird tweets that come out there all the time. I try to find more level-headed ones. And I myself, like I said, feel more level-headed today than I did yesterday. So it's great. More coming at you on Wednesday, as we are going to be only a day away at that point from more football, which feels great. I love this league for that. Only 2 days off between games at any given time. Thank you, NFL. So glad you're back, even though, again, it's an abusive relationship and I like you a lot more than you like me. So with that said, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. I'd greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment on if there's something you think I missed or wildly out of pocket on, or tweet me at TheAltNFL. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Pods, or anywhere else, and you enjoyed the podcast, please leave me a 5-star review. Other than that, that's it for this episode. I will see you tomorrow.